Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of my series with IDAGIO, Classical Revolution. For those of you joining for the first time today, my name is Rachel Fenlon. I'm a classical soprano and pianist based in Berlin. And in this series, we're exploring why creativity and boundary pushing and why pushing these boundaries fuels creativity and feels revolutionary, and why that's important for us as artists in the classical music industry. And so today we're going to talk about, more specifically, about shaping our ideas, about the roles of us musicians in the classical music world of today, in society, and also how to navigate a free artistic life, an autonomous life in an industry which, like so many, relies heavily on the commercialization to have a presence in society. And so I'm really thrilled to introduce our very first guest on the series, Tamara Stefanovich.
Hello.
Hi, Tamara. Tamara is a world-renowned concert pianist. She is the really definition of an artist, someone who's really forged her own path and made just fantastic artistic choices and commands in repertoire, from, in her own words, Bach to Boulez. And she's really forged an important musical voice, and not without struggle, something that we'll talk about in the series today. And Tamara has mentored and worked with some of the great musical minds of the 20th and 21st century, like Boulez and Kurtag. Her discography is extensive, her performance experience is extensive, and actually after the episode today, you'll see a link to a playlist that Tamara has curated of musical pieces which mean a lot to her, and also some of the recordings of hers that have been really important or that she's very proud of. And I've also included some of my favorite recordings as well of Tamaras, because she's just that awesome. And also, in addition to this, we have linked a link in IDAGIO to her full discography. So welcome, Tamara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
How are you today?
Oh, very well.
Yes.
I don't think that I'm allowed to not be well, because I'm breathing and I have clean air and clean food and clean water to drink. So I think this is our duty to be cheerful and well.
Yep, I like that. So, I mean, let's dive in. Could you tell us, maybe to start, a little bit about your musical background, your introduction to music, your first introductions to music?
So I'm the youngest of 3 children, and my parents thought that it would be good that we're introduced to foreign languages, sports, and to learn one, a real musical instrument. So languages, sports, instrument, and you would think that we would be 3 different people, but we're all musicians. So, but we still, all of us, we love sports and are very good in foreign languages and the foreign literature, and generally, trying to integrate in the cultures that we live in, which means Germany, States, and Spain. So the musical culture in Yugoslavia at that moment was really vast, and it was luck that my mom could not afford a babysitter, so she had to drag me to Belgrade Philharmonic twice a week. So I was a baby drinking milk from a bottle and listening to the orchestral sound.
Okay.
And it's at some moment, my brother and sister, they're wonderful violinists and cellists, and we thought, well, what could go well with that? So it was piano at the end. Okay. And it was really a choice also because of the repertoire and the vastness of colors that you can produce with it. Mm-hmm. And it goes very, very fast in Yugoslavia, because if you're admitted to a music school, first of all, you have to pass an entrance exam showing that you can dance, that you can have a good rhythm, that you can follow the melody, that you really have the affinity to it and the talent. And then they invest into you, and you're really, I mean, one would say it's it's a very disciplinary approach to it, but I would say that this is really respect for the talent that is in the first row.
Mm-hmm.
So it went very, very far, and then I was very bored at school, and then I started university, my bachelor, when I was 13. So I was one of those annoying nerds with thick classes and reading books. And I thought that I would then finish the music studies and go on to study literature, which was one of my great passions. So I got my bachelor at 17, and then the war broke off in Yugoslavia, and I was destined then to stay a pianist, as I say.
Wow. And then, am I right? You then went to the States, you went to the Curtis Institute?
Yes, I mean, you would understand that at that moment, I already had my friends, my personal, private love life in Yugoslavia, so I actually wanted to stay there. It was, I didn't have the ambition to go to Curtis like everyone did. Yeah. So for me, Curtis was like a punishment, believe it or not.
Wow, that's different.
I know. I mean, my whole life was upside down. It was all or too slow or too fast or at the wrong moment, and the timing was always a bit off. So I went to Curtis, and after about a year, I wanted to go back to Yugoslavia, which was, I think, never happened at Curtis. Everyone wanted to stay at Curtis. Mm-hmm. But I just missed I thought that at Curtis was the approach was very to make a soloist the star, and this is something that I never connected to. I could never found my talent important enough to say that I'm the one that people should be paying tickets for. So it was a mix of philosophies that I'm still having a lot of doubts about at this age, many years later. So it's a discrepancy between my passion for music and what's needed of me as a musician at this moment in this world. Okay,
interesting. Yeah, I've heard you in other interviews talk about this, about the utility of a musician, and I'm curious. Actually, we can talk about that. What do you feel your role is as a creative artist in society? What does that mean?
I think to understand that you are in a society. So you're first a citizen, you're first a human, and you have to find your place in the society. And of course, music was, as it started, it was like a prayer, and it was part of the church, part of the court. And it was paid by the court, paid by the rich people. And then it started to seep into the lower society, and it was the entertainment. And today we have these two extremes that are going in two very opposite directions and still trying to merge. So the elitist music is now trying to be very popular, and vice versa. So we're talking about popular music, some of the pop artists being extremely creative, like Björk and so on. So it's interesting to observe that the mingling and the merging of the different kinds of music is creating a chaos in the sense of what is this for? And should it be for something? So I believe as a performing artist, we should be the ones helping the art of our time to exist and to blossom, as it was all the time until end of the 19th century, where suddenly Liszt, who was an incredible composer and incredible performer, merged into this one persona, and the performer got more important than the composer. And I think this is a problem that we have to solve somehow in the next century, because the 20th century has had this huge amount of, for me, preposterous image of, you buy an LP. I'm the old generation, CD today, but, LP where it says Herbert von Karajan, Berliner Philharmoniker, and even smaller Beethoven. So this is something that I can't live with. For me, the creative artists are the ones who are creating art. We're the performance artists. And suddenly we're the ones that people are buying tickets for and not for the program. So I'm trying, it's a Sisyphus work. I'm trying to close the gaps between all those things, and to understand, also to be very pragmatic, to understand what society I'm living in,
Yeah.
To not forget about the public, what they are thirsty for and hungry for, not to be too educational and patronizing, but still to understand that I am living in 20th and 21st century, and I will not be an artist who's copying the systems of the 19th and the first half of the 20th century. I think generally what we do a lot now in art is really we're threading the steps of someone who was before us instead of creating new parts. I think that's the role we should be having.
Definitely. I think about that a lot lately too. And I was thinking today, actually, I had this thought about how something about the classical music industry feels sometimes like we're coming at it like it's an endangered species. I was in the forest and then that thought came to me, and we treat it a lot like we have to be really safe. And what do you think about that? I mean, I just thought we're always, it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with making mistakes or risk taking. And I feel those things are the important things for creativity. What's your experience with that?
I think generally in the Western culture, the idea is that you're given a life and you're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be achieving, you're supposed to be optimizing, and you're supposed to have this glorious life. So the idea that life is about living, which means experiencing without thinking about the end result, I think that's maybe more philosophical, but I think it's closer to life. To not expect of life that it's going to be comfortable, successful, that you're supposed to be joyful all the time and happy all the time. I think for me, risks and mistakes, it's not negative. It's part of life.
Definitely.
I mean, it's not something, I'm not trying to have a life where I'm happy all the time. I'm trying to have a life where I'm going to experience as much as I can experience in this lifetime so that I can die without regrets. I think that's for me, that's the chief goal, like to have no regrets. And you will have, I believe, as an artist, no regrets if you've really pushed your boundaries and the passions until the utmost limits, and to understand your potential, to understand who you are, and to live that to the utmost. And I think that if you're giving a talent, it tells you, okay, this is a dangerous path, please take it. It doesn't say it's a talent, you have to now put a glass ceiling over it and conserve it, because the plant will die. And what I'm saying, I have so many promises. I mean, we're 8 billion people on the earth. There are more and more talent every day. It's unbelievable. It's uninspiring. But how many of them really develop, and not even develop, but just grow? Not even, optimize themselves, but just grow. Are they allowed to grow? So I think that if you can train yourself to not think of terms of, am I successful? But am I living to my full potential? I mean, it all sounds very esoteric, but it's basically, when I was 21, I came to Cologne because of the sanctions in Serbia. All of my scholarships were annulled. I had literally no money for 3 years. I ate for once a day, the best diet ever. And you would think that I would be depressed and thinking, how should I earn money? No, I was practicing all the time, because the hunger and the passion for what you do is the vitality of your life. It's not the comfort. I think that in the West, there is something that we learned in a bad way, that the comfort is like the status of your successful life, and not like they are linked. But I think that's utterly not connected to how life is.
So how do you maintain, I mean, this is also, it's really fantastic to hear. And how do you maintain that given the external pressures that can be put on an artist in today's society, and especially, particularly within the classical music industry? How do you, I mean, you're someone with so much integrity. That's just so clear in everything that you've done. And so how do you maintain that? I'm curious, because there must have been moments that it wasn't, or that you questioned it or didn't feel?
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
I'm questioning still. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still thinking that maybe I should be doing something else, you know? And I think it shouldn't come from depression or, I mean, it's natural life doubts. Like now with the Corona crisis, I think we should all really question ourselves. Should we be musicians? Is this what we need? But then really confront yourself with all the limitations that you have mentally, psychologically, emotionally, you know, physiologically. What are you made to be? But for me, this resistance was something that was maybe from my parents. My mom is Croatian, my dad is Serbian.
Okay.
So already there are two poles in what was called a socialist country, which was basically a communist country, that worked very well from the outside. But of course, once Tito was the big tyrant that was governing us, when he went away, the whole structure collapsed. So the feeling that you were protected, but actually that you were guided from outside forces is, I think it's a very unhealthy thing. So you were given this protection from the government, that it was all for you, for the society, for people, but the inner resistance has to be then even larger. So even at the very, very beginning, I remember everyone wanted to play a certain Chopin piece. Everyone wanted to play a certain Bach piece. I was always the one who said, no, I want to play a Handel Passacaglia, not Bach. I don't want to play Chopin. I want to play Schumann. So there was something in me that said, you're doing this, so I don't need to do that. There are so many paths. So this is me, and I'm not judging, is this good or not, but I want to make my own choices. And sometimes, yes, then I would play, you know, no one knows that I actually won a Chopin competition in Germany in my 20s. I think this is probably the funniest thing I have in my biography, that it's not in my biography. But this is something, for example, that I've done for very pragmatical reasons. I needed money. There was a Chopin competition. I enrolled. I learned Chopin. I love Chopin. He's a genial composer. And I won. The first prize was not given, but I got the second one. So this is something that, of course, in different states of your life, you have to make pragmatical choices, smart choices. If you have a child, of course, you have to be very aware of where is your life going. But if you're an artist, you are obliged to go your own way. Otherwise, you're not allowed to be called an artist. You're then allowed to be called an instrumentalist, a pianist, and so on. But for me, it's, if you're giving this vista, I mean, the talent is like having a larger overview of life. If you're giving this, why are you then choosing to put the, you know, like what they put on the horses, and you say, okay, this person is doing this, so I will copy that and maybe be a better version or better variation of that. Why? I still don't understand that.
You talk in another interview, and I really liked this point. You talk about storytelling as an important introduction for children with new music, and I thought that was such a great analogy. You talk about working with children, introducing them to new music, and thinking about what music is, or how storytelling is the right kind of vessel for them to comprehend certain aspects of new music. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that. I found that really interesting.
Sure. Well, I was introduced to new music at a very late stage. I was 24, and I literally, I didn't know one piece of Stockhausen or Boulez. I mean, I was really striped away from any knowledge, or it's criminal. But it also, I was already more or less formed character. So at this moment, of course, my gods, if I would be religious, my gods would still be Bach and Boulez, you know? But still, I was very much aware that I am the second, the third generation of people after these people were treading on the earth. So I had to find a way that is connected to my story and my life, and how to talk about this music. Because at this moment, there was this huge elitism about talking about music in a super structured, abstract way, where you do not mention anything human, any trace of emotion. And I thought, But I've met Boulez. He's a super emotional person. He's super funny. He's very communicative. He tells stories after concert, dinner parties. He tells stories. He's a storyteller. He's doing the same in the music. You cannot, I talked to a neurologist once, and this helped me a lot. He said, it's not possible to use just your brain and then just your emotions. They're always connected. It's always connected. So they are not what they call, Kopfmenschen, like brain people and emotional people. This does not exist. Maybe there are some accentuation of something, but it's always merged. Emotion is always present during all of our wake life, unless we're on drugs or dying. Yeah, but even there. So if the emotion is always there, someone who is a creator, who of course has to structure something, he's all the time in contact with his emotions, even if he wants to block them. But this is still a storytelling. You can tell to someone, okay, this is someone who is, I talked about a concert I'm doing next week about Scarlatti, a slow movement. It's very melancholy. And I talked about this. It's a melancholy with a straight back. So maybe this is an explosive music, but with a straight back, someone who doesn't allow himself to explode. So when I was talking to kids who are doing, Boulez and Courtag and Ligeti, and I was just telling them, how does it sound? And they were, talking about smells, about, is it something that's coming back behind you? Is it something that it's in front of you? Are you talking about someone, or are you talking about yourself? So I think if you have a vocabulary that it's vast in terms of words, emotions, experiences, life experiences, then you're equipped to make this music really alive. Because I do not know any composer that does not want to communicate the music that he has written. This does not exist. So the idea of abstraction and reducing people in a very small box, for me, does not exist. I will always try to, put a lamp or the light on a different way to make this a communicative experience. I don't know if this answers your question at all.
No, it does. It does, absolutely. Did you notice, I suppose I asked the question because, of course, part of the situation we're in right now as a whole, especially as classical musicians, is that we're, as I said earlier, we're afraid to push certain boundaries for our audience because we're afraid that the industry in general is endangered. So, hearing you talk about storytelling makes me think that there are possibilities for our audiences to connect with the music in a really important way, and it made me think about that. So I would be, after working with these children, did you notice like a difference in their relationship with the music, and what was that?
Of course, if you allow a person to be free and to tell them that they can't make mistakes, the creativity will flow. But the system today is bound about having a mirror in front of you in terms of internet, reviews, colleagues, what's expected to be or not, that you're all the time mirrored. So of course you look at yourself, the first thing you see in a mirror, it's a mistake. You never look at yourself and think, oh, I look really good. I sound very good. So we are always on this quest of optimizing. So if you take that away, then the creativity will flow, and then the mistakes will be made or not. But you will be in contact with your vital force, which is the essence of, I think, every person. We're all creative in some way. My mom is a phenomenally creative person in so many other ways, but she doesn't have a diploma of creativity in a certain thing. But she's more creative than many of my pianist friends because her mind is open and she is allowed to think in many, many different ways. My dad, the same thing. So it's the generations that had huge wars in their biography. And I think that the Corona crisis that we have, of course, it's a very strange one because it's not in front of you. It's not visible. Yeah, it's something that it's happening, that you connect through internet again. Yeah? So it's none of us, I mean, very few of us has really someone who has suffered gravely from that. So we're talking about something that we've heard. And it doesn't sit in our bodies, so we're not in contact with that. So we're again on a pause. And I think it's very interesting to see, what does this do with us?
Yes.
I have no problem with that. I've went through, I had wars, I've emigrated, I've changed my place of habitat at least 13 to 14 times. I had breakups. I had child very, very late. I didn't have a career for a very, very long time. So everything happened in a very strange timing. So this is a bit like, oh, pandemic, okay, check another life experience. But why not use this as an opening to say this is a gift of a pause, that otherwise we would have never had this. Never, ever. It will not come again. Or maybe, I don't know, but not in these terms. So
exactly.
Why not take this and to see where the, where the life force is and what are we exactly missing? Some of us are missing the sportive way of, being on the piano. Some of us are missing the direct communication with the public, the psychological seduction that we have with the public. Some of us are completely complacent or depressed. So it's interesting to find the time to re-engage with the life forces and the vitality to understand exactly what is your mission. But it can't be repeating something that someone else has done. That cannot be. I think we should all not try manically to be individualists or original, but to really understand what is exactly the core of your artistic feeling and DNA, and try to make the potential grow as much as it can go.
So really look inside.
Yes, but look outside as well, to not, we're doing a lot of this protection. There are a lot of people who say, I have to protect myself. And I always think like, you can't, you're part of the whole thing. So you have to understand, what is the industry? Do you want to be part of it? In which way? Someone also told me, oh, but these, the agents, and I hope one of my wonderful agents is looking at this, because I adore them. They're my friends. Why? Because we're in constant communication. They propose a thing that they have been proposed from somewhere, but I think my Verantwortung, my sense of responsibility has to be to say, no, this doesn't engage me. And I'm very sorry, from this we could have got things, but we do have the responsibility to say no and to say yes at the given moment.
Yeah.
But no one is pushing you to be a certain way.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of going back a little bit, what I found interesting was your thought about how we don't necessarily come, when we're talking about classical music and the society or the industry around that, is that we don't necessarily come from a place of abundance. Is kind of what I got from that, especially using the example of your mother being so creative and how as classical musicians we're sort of raised in front of mirrors and taught to look rather at the mistakes and all of that has me thinking, how in a perfect world or something, or given this time now that we have, how would you reimagine working towards a different future as a whole, as an industry, as classical musicians functioning within an industry? How could you yourself imagine that?
Well, to understand that you have a responsibility towards the time that you live in, which means really being aware of the art that it's being created now. To not stop your curiosity at 1920s, 30s. I think this is really criminal, to just completely ignore the last 8 years. I think this is just, for me, it's unimaginable. This doesn't mean not playing old music, but we have to connect the dots. Why are people today writing the things that they're writing? Second thing, to understand that in order to exist, of course, one part of the music industry is going to stay commercial and populist, of course, but maybe they're the machine that allows some other parts of the musical industry to exist as well. So let's not fight against that. Let people who want to do that, but to understand that also in a Darwinistic way, some things will fall off. And yes, this is what they called in a very horrible way in the 90s in the Yugoslavia, it's called collateral damage. So when they bombed Belgrade for 3 months, they said, you know, some civilians died, it's collateral damage. This will unfortunately happen now as well. And I'm very afraid that people who think that they're not important will say, well, this just happened, I'm not needed. We're all needed if there is a passion behind that. So we need street musicians. I mean it, really. We need salon pianists. We need bar pianists. We also need mainstream people who play Chopin, Beethoven concerts in recitals. We also need crazy people playing just avant-garde music. We also need people singing and playing at the same time. We need the abundance of talent so that we have a really 4D view of what it means to be a creative artist. And we should really stop looking left and right who is doing what. Just concentrate on what really engages you. But I think that we are facing, yes, a different world. I'm not so pessimistic as many of my colleagues. I don't think that we'll need another 10 years to come back where we were, or 5 years, but it will be different. Yeah. But if we're not waiting for the industry and the politicians to tell us how it's going to be, we have to be proactive. We have to be the ones saying, okay, we're trying this, is this working? No, fine, I made a mistake, let's try another thing. So there were a lot of criticism, and it's now mounting to a very angry crowd saying, oh my God, these live streams, this is terrible because they're not paid and we're ruining the industry and this is a bad quality. I would say, try it, then you can say. If you haven't tried, you didn't know. It's so easy to criticize others. It's so easy to comment on others. If you haven't done it yourself, I don't think that we should ever criticize any colleague who is doing that. I have my opinion, and this will show in what I'm doing. But I think we should allow every musician now to explore any path that is given to us, to try to communicate with the public or with our inner world, so that we are still living musicians. So if it means that you don't want to play for next 6 months and you want to go into your inner cave and think about music, do it. If you want to live stream every day, do it. So I think it's very important that this is an experimental phase, so that when the world comes back to a more or less normal path, we have new propositions. If we have an experiment, then we will not know what's possible or not. And let's please all make mistakes. I think if we don't make mistakes, we'll just repeat the same thing.
Tamara, thank you so much for this today. I think I could talk to you for at least another hour, but we're out of time, if you can believe it. So thank you so much. And you're so inspiring.
Thank you so much.
And these are just such inspiring thoughts. So thank you for coming today. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to check out Tamara's playlist on IDAGIO and all of her fantastic CDs and discography. Thank you, Tamara. And
thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.